One arrogant insult in a golden banquet hall turned a millionaire's empire to dust in less than an hour. And the person who stood at the center of it all was not a CEO, not an investor, but a waitress. The chandeliers of the Grand Marlowe Hotel in San Francisco glittered like frozen fire that night. It was an evening designed for power, polished marble, endless wine, and the quiet hum of a jazz trio. At the head of the table sat Victor Harlow, 41, the iron-willed founder of Harlow Dynamics, a man who measured his worth in numbers and mergers. Across from him was Richard Everly, 74, the reclusive venture capitalist they called the Iron Whisper, famous for speaking little and deciding everything. And moving quietly between them, unseen yet carrying the weight of the night, was Leah Carter, 27. A waitress with steady hands, calm steps, and the kind of composure that only years of storms can teach. The spark came when Leah leaned in to save a mistake before it became one. A Bordeaux glass tilted, crimson spilling across Victor's sleeve. She moved instantly, blotting the stain with professional care. "My apologies, sir," she whispered. Victor didn't see professionalism. He saw inconvenience. He straightened, his voice loud enough to slice the music in half. "Don't touch me, you stupid girl!" The sound echoed like a slap that never landed. The entire ballroom froze. Forks halted mid-air. Polite laughter shattered. Even the jazz pianist lifted his fingers from the keys. Cameras tilted upward in silence, recording without a sound. Leah did not flinch. She folded the towel, placed it neatly at her side, and stood still. No tears, no retreat. Only a silence so deliberate that it felt like the whole room was holding its breath with her. Victor brushed at his cuff as if dusting away the moment. "Winners don't lose focus," he said to Richard. "Smooth and confident. They stay in control." But control had already slipped. It now belonged to the people who had witnessed his words, to the quiet weight of dozens of cameras capturing what arrogance looked like when unmasked. Richard set his fork down slowly. He did not speak. His silence carried more force than any outburst could. Leah moved again, but not with defeat. She poured water for the elders first, then assistants, then investors. Victor was last. The order was small, invisible to most, but not to him. His jaw tightened. His pride, so used to being fed, had just been made to wait. When she passed again, Victor leaned toward her. His voice dropped, sharp as a razor under cloth. "Still learning your place, I see." Another invisible wire snapped in the air. Richard's aide, watching from the side, slipped away with his phone pressed to his ear. A signal had been given. Moments later, Leah bent to refill Victor's glass. His hand clamped suddenly onto her wrist. Not hard enough to bruise, but tight enough to brand. His breath carried wine as he hissed, "When men like me are speaking, you stand still, like the help you are." The room remembered. Every guest, every camera, every conscience, none of them forgot. Leah's eyes rose to his. Steady, unbroken. She freed her wrist with calm precision and walked on, picking up a fallen crayon for a little girl at the table's end, her smile soft as she returned it. In that small gesture, it became clear who held real grace that night. Richard Everly tilted his head, whispering only 2 words to his aide who had returned. "It's time." Victor kept droning on about market expansion, about doubling ROI in 18 months. but his voice now floated uselessly, like paper boats in a storm. The anchor of the night was no longer his pitch. It was the moment the room had already seen. Leah was no stranger to storms. She had raised her younger brother Daniel after their parents vanished, trading her college track scholarship for double shifts to pay for his cerebral palsy therapy. She knew exhaustion like a second language, but she also knew resilience. Serving in places like this wasn't just work. It was observation. Invisibility is armor, she had once told herself. When they don't see you, they show who they really are. Tonight, invisibility cracked. Tonight, the armor turned into a mirror. And when Richard Everly finally stood, no speech, no tapped glass, just the simple act of rising, the entire hall froze. Forks hovered midair. Conversations died. Candles flickered. He looked not at Victor, but at Leah. Their eyes met. She did not lower her head. And in that single look, the $200 million deal on the table was no longer about technology or finance. It was about dignity. And dignity had just taken its seat at the head of the table. Victor Harlow didn't notice at first. He was still caught in the sound of his own voice, boasting about integration plans, about doubling revenue streams, about efficiency charts that looked like climbing mountains. But the room had stopped climbing with him. The air had shifted. Everyone sat in silence, waiting, not for his next slide, but for Richard Everly's next move. Victor forced a laugh, hoping to stitch the air back together. But his smile looked more like a mask cracking under heat. He reached for another joke, a story, something to reclaim the rhythm. Nothing came. The silence had already sentenced him. Richard finally spoke. His voice was calm, almost conversational. "Before we talk about numbers," he said, "I want to observe values. And before we go forward, there is someone very important I'd like you to meet properly." The room turned. Leah Carter had shed her apron, her tray, her invisibility. She walked steadily from the back, her steps soft but certain. The cameras tilted further, phones rising higher. "This is Leah Carter," Richard said. "She is family to me. I took her in when she was a child. She chose to keep her last name because it is her story, and I am proud of it. Tonight, you insulted her not just with words, but with action." A ripple moved through the hall, silent but undeniable. The portrait of the evening shifted. The waitress was no longer background. She was the center. Victor chuckled thinly, scrambling. "Richard, this is a misunderstanding. She spilled wine on me. You said what you believed," Richard cut in. His tone never rose, but the words sliced clean. "And you did what you thought you had the right to do." He turned toward the other tables. "When a person shows you who they are in public, accountability must arrive in public." The verdict was unspoken but absolute. A senator in the back adjusted his tie and left. A cluster of executives followed. Chairs scraped quietly, each one like an exclamation point. Power didn't roar that night. It walked away, step by step. Leah stood at Richard's side, her chin lifted. For years she had worked unseen, overhearing the truths people only revealed when they thought no one important was watching. Tonight, she was no longer invisible. Victor's phone buzzed on the table. Notifications were spilling faster than his numbers. A journalist in the back had already pushed out a headline. Investor Richard Everly walks away from $200 million deal after CEO's public insult. Within minutes, hashtags bloomed across social feeds. Hashtag dignity over deals began trending before dessert was even served. Victor tried one last time, his voice a tremor of desperation. "Richard, $200 million is just the beginning. We can scale this." "This isn't misunderstanding," came a voice from another table. It was a rival investor, calm but sharp. "It's a cultural blind spot, and blind spots sink ships." The statement landed like a hammer. More guests rose, leaving their plates untouched. A female VP from Harlow Dynamics checked her watch, pulled out her phone, and slipped away without a word. Victor looked around, watching his empire dissolve, not with a bang, but with the sound of footsteps walking away. His power, once absolute, had shrunk to the size of a stained cuff. Leah's voice entered the silence, steady but firm. "You insulted me publicly. You apologize publicly." The words landed like a gavel. Phones caught them instantly, captions already spreading across timelines. Victor searched for a ladder to climb down with dignity, but the ladder was gone. His dignity was spilled across the tablecloth with the Bordeaux stain. Richard sat down again. No applause, no grand speech, just the finality of a decision. The $200 million deal was dead. Phones around the room buzzed almost in unison. Notifications lit up screens. Stone Holdings exits Harlow Dynamics partnership. Stock prices flickered downward before the waiters had even cleared the plates. Victor's empire cracked in real time. His board sent urgent messages. His PR team drafted hollow apologies, but the story was no longer his to control. Meanwhile, Leah slipped back into the rhythm of service. She returned a smile to the little girl at the table. She gathered plates with calm hands. She nodded at another server who trembled with fear. In her quiet grace, she had taught an entire room that dignity can outvalue even $200 million. When the banquet ended, Victor stumbled out into the night air, the city lights of San Francisco burning above him. For the first time in his career, he felt small. His driver's phone screen lit up with the headline, "CEO humiliates waitress, loses $200 million deal." Inside, Leah finished her shift. She walked to the staff entrance where the fluorescent bulbs buzzed faintly overhead. She checked her phone. Hundreds of messages, dozens of news alerts. One text from a coworker stood out. "Thank you for tonight." She closed her eyes, took a breath, and smiled softly. Not victory, not triumph, just visibility. That night, a stain on a white cloth became the signature of a truth no one could deny. Money bends to power, but power breaks before dignity. In the end, Victor Harlow didn't just lose a $200 million deal. He lost something far greater, the illusion that power can excuse cruelty. One careless insult tore down an empire, while one woman's dignity reminded the world that respect is priceless. So, what do you think matters more in the long run? Numbers or human values? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story gave you something to reflect on, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more powerful stories that reveal the true cost of arrogance and the quiet strength of dignity.